have now checked that the VOD actually works. It saves to Twitch. I won't have the embarrassment like last time where I recorded an hour-long stream and then, well, I hadn't recorded it. So it was all for naught. It was terrible. But this time, I actually checked before I turned on the stream. So this time we're good. So today's agenda is very simple. I'm gonna play my game that I've been working on at its current state, and we're gonna look at some of the past versions of that game and just some of the decisions I made to get the point where it's a very simple game actually, and I will show you what it is. Hopefully this is very large for me, but at least you can read it, so that's good. So I'm developing my game in Bevy. It's a game engine written in Rust. It's an ECS engine, Entity Component System, and it's a pretty great engine, though sometimes it's lacking in support of certain kinds of features, and well, there are great plugins, but not all plugins are maybe, you know, it's I would say it's beta software for sure. I would not throw, you know, a team of 100 developers to use it. That would probably not end that great. But this is Glow. This is my game. Here you see my past scores. Let's see if we can make it on the top score list. Here it saves the last 10 plays. So in this game, it's very simple. A very simple arcade game where you play as this blue ball emitting all these nice blue particles, and you're controlling it by the mouse, and your goal is simply to get as many points before you die, and you die by touching anything. So a bit of that like rage gameplay going on, you know, like Flappy Birds or a lot of other games where one mistake and you're dead. But let's make a good attempt. Now, you can like push stuff. So, but when you push, you grow. So you have to be a little bit careful here. And you grow exponentially, but you shrink linearly. So, therefore, you don't want to grow too large, because then you will never be able to shrink back down in size again. Let's see here, we have a point there. And, oh Jesus Christ. I have a piece of paper next to me that... Okay, I'm gonna blame this piece of paper I have next to me here. And I'm gonna put it down on the ground here so it doesn't fuck up when I move my mouse about. That's obviously one downside of this game. Maybe you need a really high sense on your game mouse, so you don't need to move so much. Luckily I have a large mouse pad, so I should have the freedom to move. So an interesting part about this game that not a lot of games is, but you can see how it uses the entire real estate of your screen. And that's actually kind of nice. So when you change the size of the screen, let's do that. Like something like this. The game will just keep going on, and then you can like go back. Something like that. It might be an export here actually when I think about it. Let's try a thing. I have a slightly feeling that this might work. What happens if I do this? Okay, I still want to see myself, otherwise I think it's gonna be a problem. Okay, that was bad. My exploit did not work. I think I'll come up with an exploit. Anyway, what I want to point out anyway is that the game works on any screen size. And what happens then is that the enemies just shrink the size, but you have less real estate. So I haven't really found... I think the difficulty on any size is about the same. I haven't really found it be any different. Both my high scores, one is using a very small window and one is using very large. But obviously, if the things are smaller, they're easier to push around, right? But it gives you less time to react, which can be a problem. It used to be a bit more hectic, like you can see it here. Well, there I died, so let's try that again, but this time make the screen a little bit larger. Feel more about my screen like that. Yeah, that's good. And go. So let's see, we need 63 points to get on the score list. Let's see if we can do it. So over time the game will get harder, more enemies will spawn and they will come in faster. So let's reset. When you reset, all enemies just despawn immediately and well, then they come in rushing in again. Jesus Christ, that was close. That shit was clutch. It's really dangerous to take those at the corners. Maybe you shouldn't do it. Let's see if we can find the clear here. Oh no, it's on the other side. Fuck. Oh, bad. I was looking too much here and how I'm gonna go about it. You really have to like look where your character are, or it can be difficult sometimes to notice where the clear is, which you need if you want to last a bit longer, and also while looking at your characters. It's a skill issue, I'm sorry, okay. I'm the creator of the game, but, you know, still has skill issues. A tactic that I found is that you just want to be about this place, and then clear it, and use this at the last moment before it disappears. So these spawn every 30 seconds, but after 30 seconds these will also despawn. So there's only ever one. There, I grabbed it at the very last moment, and now I can go to the next one. Okay, now I maybe used it a little bit prematurely, but it was in a bad spot and bad stuff was happening. Let's see if I choose the wrong side here, or if it will spawn on my side. Okay, I see where it's spawning. Let's push our way. Okay, we're gonna have to push our way. We wanna really go for the in-betweens here. Notice how stuff is coming in. Oh, this is not good, this is not good, this is not good. There. Aye! Fucking disappeared just before we got there. Let's see if I can fucking see it. I can't see it. I can't see it. I can't goddamn see it. Okay, just survive. Do we have a clear anywhere? Can't see it. There it is. 1, 2, 3, go. There, bro. And now, grab all the points before the fucking clears again. Oh, jeez. Holy shit! That was so close, dude. Oh, okay. Oh, no. Ah, fuck. Okay, only 44. Let's do it again. It gets really hectic. So the sound of the points now like a whip sound, which added some effects to. I'm not so happy about it. I think a lot of... So I'm gonna change it. I don't know to what though. I think I want like a bike bell sound or something. I want what I'm really going for is an 80s, futuristic 80s aesthetic, which I've got a bit with these like glowing orbs and stuff. But my thought is to lean into that aesthetic later with UI, which right now, right, the UI is just like this black and white. It's kind of boring, but the reason why it is like that is because UI in Bevy is kind of hard. Yeah, it's a lot of work, so I'm gonna have to put in some put in a decent amount of work to make it look really good, but I think it's gonna be worth it. So I was watching a video about game development recently, about like how do you make an attractive game, and one of his suggestions is like if you're making an abstract game, then you really have to nail presentations, right? Because one of the reasons people like to play games is, you know, to have experiences they haven't had. So like, oh, I want to be a cowboy, I want to pilot, I want to be, yeah, you know, whatever. But nobody ever wants to be a goddamn blue glowing dot in the sea of red. So, you're gonna have to make stuff look good as hell to make it really stand out. Okay, it's there, I see where it... Okay, that was good. Oh! But we made fucking 7th place. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Amazing. I have so many in 63, I have 2. There were 3 entrances at 63. Now there's only 2 left. Okay, let's see if we can make it again. It's interesting that they all are like 70 and then there's this jump to 100 and then, you know, 121. So there are 2 like big jumps there. We're pretty close getting to 4th place, like only a couple of points. I did fuck it up though. It was like coming really fast from the side. But I was getting lucky, as you saw, like with a clear spawning kind of close to me, and so let's just hover around this place. We want there to spawn as many points before we use it as possible. I want to use it at the very last moment. Fuck off. Oh! Aye! Why did I do that? Why did I do that? That was stupid. Okay, let's go. Okay, let's push you. Let's fight our way through this. We need it clear now. We need it clear. Okay, it's on the other side. That's kind of bad for us. Amazing, amazing. Yeah, we have it in the middle now. Let's see where it is. Okay, let's move. Let's move. Let's push our way in. It's nice being a little bit bigger when you go for taking all the points. Jesus Christ, that was close. Holy shit! Oh my god. That was insane. Okay, so... Well, I see that there's someone in the chat. Hopefully not just me. Accidentally viewing myself. Welcome to the chat, anyway. So, I think I'm gonna talk a bit more about the game. I actually think I've discovered a bug in my games. Let's see if we can recreate it. So, let's try to explain this. But, as explained earlier, the game depends, some of the parameters of the gameplay depends on the size of your window. So let's see here, they are a bit small. Let's make the window size a bit larger. And you will immediately see what I mean. Then, okay, now I accidentally died. But anyway, now when enemies spawn they will be larger, as you see. So, I have a theory, because I happen to know that the despawn radius, when enemies get too far off the center of the game wall, they will despawn automatically, and it's to avoid there being too many entities and stuff. Okay, well they are died, so now we can't show it, but if we play the game for a bit, we might be able to shrink the screen while we're like close to the center. pull up the screen again and a bunch of entities will be gone. So that's my hope, that I can show that that's a problem. And then we can see what we can do about fixing it. Okay, so normally I would take the clear, but let's not do that. Let's try to cheat. So I think we're gonna have to like do that. Or have... I didn't notice anything. Okay, I might be entirely incorrect. I might have thought about this and this is not a bug. Okay, maybe I'm a genius and apparently I've solved this issue. Okay, apparently not an issue. I thought that would be a bug, but okay. Good programming on my part then. So let's see if we can get the square one in the middle here. And we got the curve. Now it's nice being large because then you can more easily pick them up. So while it can be a bit scary being too large because you don't know if you're gonna shrink fast enough, it has some benefits. Or I maybe just need to get better at aiming. Okay. Sometimes you get this effect where all the enemies just start going from one direction, or they go from like one part of the screen to the other side. Jesus Christ, where is it? There's the clear. Okay, we have it. Oh, Jesus Christ, this is so fucking intense. Bam. There we have it. Jesus Christ, I'm missing so many. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, holy fuck. Holy shit. Okay, where is it? Where is it? Oh my god. I can't look anywhere but where my character currently is. So I'm trying to see like where is the clear. Holy shit, that was close. Okay. Where is the... Okay, oh my god, it's at the edge of the other side. Yeah, this is bad. This is real bad. Yeah. Hard to recover from that one. So, I'm gonna try to make the high score list once again. And then I thought I was gonna show you some old versions of the game and some of the things I made to improve it. That's one of the benefits of using Git and have, you know, pretty much all your game code just be code and not a bunch of asset files. I don't really know how people in Unity does it, or I'm guessing they just use Git and maybe Git large file storage. But whenever I've seen people do it, they do seem to have a bit problem with version handling. Something that's a bit easier when you're going a bit more, I don't know, with a game meaning that's a bit more pure, I guess, in some way. Or not as, yeah, not as heavy-handed as Unity. One of the benefits I found with learning game development using Bevy and Rust is that since I didn't have an editor, that sort of simplified the... Oh, Jesus Christ, that was close. Simplified the learning process because I didn't have to learn, you know, a complex UI with a million buttons. Instead, I can think about stuff I already know because I'm a professional developer already. So like, oh, here's a loop, here's a function. Okay, this is struct. And not like, okay, well, that was semi-close, but okay. So let's show some old versions of the game and some of the improvements we have made since. So I'm gonna show git log here, and actually I learned a nice command. Oh yeah, that's good. That I used for work previously today. Though I can't see much. hard to read for you guys. I'm gonna make it a bit smaller so it actually fits on screen. Like that. Yeah, that's good. Something weird seems to happen when I scroll. What the hell? Okay, looks good. Maybe I should not use that. It looked kind of weird. Okay, this seems easier. So we want to find some commits. Let's go back in time before Christmas, because then I was showing this game to my niece and nephew, and they got like slightly addicted to it, even though it was a worse version of what I have now. And I can show you some of the funny bugs I had and what I did to remove them. So this is January. We were looking for like December. High school showing, loading scene, or exchanging scene. Okay, there we have. I had a bug about teleporting, so let's check the commit right before that. So I'm gonna copy that. Then you git check out that one. Now we're gonna do cargo run -r. And the -r command means that the game is cargo is gonna optimize it as much as it can, which isn't really necessary because this game is really lightweight. I can play it on like my 7-year-old laptop and it runs fine, which I think is great. Though I have a lot of particle effects, which sometimes makes me worried that, so I'm probably gonna have to include some graphics settings where I can turn those off. I just have to remember now not to say my high score, because this game version is a lot easier. Number one, it doesn't have any sound. Okay, and this is when I was doing some other stuff, and that's not what we're gonna play. So wrong commit. That's not what I wanted. Add another stage. Let's check that. Check out cargo run -r. Compile times is sometimes a problem. Let's see here. Yeah, I think that's right. Let's just fit this. Okay, let's go. So obviously one downside of is that this version of the game doesn't have any sound, which makes a lot, and it takes a real long time before anything ever spawns. And some differences, like obviously you don't have this push ability, so now like I'm clicking but nothing's happening, and all the enemies move real slow. You have the points, but they are like these yellow dots, and I can show you why I changed them. One of them is for accessibility and make it easier to like parse what you see, because when you only really have when everything is a circle, right, especially it becomes harder if you can't like see the difference between the colors perhaps, and you know, anything that makes things stand out, makes things easier to see, is good, especially since we have a bit of a problem. Like when my enemy or when I'm over here, it's kind of hard to see what's happening on the other side of the screen, because well, I don't want to get killed while I do it. And here you can see what happens. The problem with this game is that everything just bunches up in the middle, and then they like never despawn. So that's another thing. Like in the previous version of the game, all the enemies despawn over time, and here they just left here. So what's gonna happen is that this will just slowly fill up until we die, or we will never die because we have teleport. Look at that. Look at that. If you pause the game and move the mouse, you can move anywhere. Like, it's impossible to die basically. Jesus Christ. Oh yeah, sometimes one of the enemies will get like super speed, and that is because when they spawn, they have like spawned into one another. So the physics system will try to separate them and apply this huge effect. So here you can actually see something, right? Here, there's a point there. You can't see it in the stream because it's like the tiniest difference, but I can see that there is a point under this enemy right here, and that is something I wanted to improve in the current version of the game. So actually that is also why there is like a displaced. So right now all the enemies are on the same zeta coordinate, but in the new version of the game, all the things like the points as well as the pickup is a little bit higher, or yeah, they're like higher up. At least their asset, or what should we call it? Their okay, let's just teleport here. Their yeah, their what the hell, sprite, I guess. Yeah, the sprite. The sprite is like a little bit higher up, so it's get overlaid, and that makes it easier to see. As well as here, these points glow, which looks nice. The only problem is like if you have these point glow and then it's over, like, and you have like the point over on this shape here. Even though I have like displaced it over, they are both white. It looks yellow, but it's actually white, and then it's like yellow around it. You can barely see it, and that's a huge problem. So that's why I changed it. Okay, this game is obviously kind of boring. I've shown you how you can cheat. Let's just die. Let's see if we can move ahead about in time and perhaps talk a little about what I did to fix it. So the problem right now in the game is that to die, your character has a collider, and if that collider ever touches an enemy, it will spawn an event that kills you. But if you touch a point, that will create like a point event, and it increases your point counter. The problem is that obviously you can, if you pause and move your mouse, you can move a large distance during just one single frame. So what we actually need to do is check where were you last frame, where are you now, and then draw a line between those two places. And if you're on that line, then you die. Or if there's an enemy on that line, then you die. And if there's point on that line, then you pick up the point. So that's basically the solution. I cast a ray between those 2 points. Hey Datester, I hope that's how you pronounce it. It's going well. Do you have any more specific question, or how it's going in general? Anyway, let's see here. So I'm gonna move ahead a little bit to a later commit and see if we can find something more interesting. If we have anything. Let's say git log. But yeah, I think it's going well thus far. So if we now go to git checkout, what's it called? I was on a specific branch before, feature square. Yeah. So this is the latest code. I think it could be a bit interesting to see the code that checks that you are not, that you don't die between 2 frames, that, or rather kills you when you try to teleport. So let's just see what I mean. So like, let's try to do like that teleport trick again. So here I'm on this side, and okay. Another thing I'm also doing is that you don't get to teleport to somewhere else, and that is because I don't want people accidentally like click on continue. So what I do is that I move the mouse to the player. But there is another trick to do the teleportation stuff that also works in the previous version of the game and this game, and that is if you do this. You move your mouse outside and then you come in from the side and you will move during one frame very far. But that won't work here. Okay, let's see if we can cause the problem again. Yeah, there. So there it happened, like I basically teleported during one frame. Oh my god. What kind of... Why am I getting low meter? No, I don't want any... I don't want any promotion. Oh my god. This shit shouldn't be even legal. Can Twitch please make these people go away? Okay, I'm getting a feeling that my viewer on this stream is a bot. But if you're not a bot, please let me know. Very disappointing. Very disappointing. I guess I should have expected that. Can you mute this person? Anyway, okay, so the bots have arrived. It's very sad, but it is what it is. I guess I'm gonna have to invest in moderation tools even before I have any viewers because the bots have already tagged me. Very sad. Yeah, where were I? Oh yeah, so as you just saw, you can move outside the screen with your mouse and then you will like teleport across it. But if there's an enemy between you and where you started on that frame, you will die. But you also need to think about, like, if you move your mouse very quickly, you could also, like, you know, before you could like sometimes move you could move through objects, but this time I actually check. And you can see, right, because like where these particle effects spawn after me, that is where I'm frame. So if you move very fast, right, there are gaps, and that is because you weren't there during that frame. So that's a way to see actually where you were on each frame. So let's try to like imagine what would happen, right, if you just, because as you grow larger, your clear ability becomes larger, and you might think, well, why shouldn't I then always be large? Then I can just like clear things all the time, right? Obviously, this is great. Now I'm gonna win, right? Well, that's one of the problem. Let's try to do it again. Let's see what happens if you become so large you cover the entire screen. You will discover that you all of a sudden die. And you might wonder, how the hell did I die? I couldn't see any enemy. Exactly. That is because eventually the enemy will spawn on top of you and automatically kill you if you become too large. Previously, there was a version of the game where you could become so large that you could get infinite points, because then you would cover up the spawn area of the enemy and then they couldn't spawn, but the points would still spawn, so you just got infinite points. It was like the easiest game ever. So I removed the check for the player entity while keeping the check so that enemies don't spawn inside of one another. Because when, I think I mentioned this previously, but when the enemies spawn inside of one another, the physics go bonkers and they are like catapulted in different directions, which is not what you want. Okay, whatever. And what happens is that instead the enemies are, well, it would pick a random point on a circle around the center of the screen here. It's like maybe a couple of screen distances away, and then it will see if that point, if spawning an enemy at that point would intersect any other enemy, and if it does, it will create a new point, a new random point, check there, and it will do it like maybe 10 or 20 times before it gives up. But that can also like cause problems, yeah. Right? If every time you try to spawn an enemy, it has nowhere to spawn, that could tank the FPS, which is why I have to give it the max number of tries. But I think I've mostly gone through the kind of things I wanted to show today. Maybe we could show some actual code now. Oh, I'm sorry for hitting the mic. That was not meant to do that. I could show some of the code perhaps that does the check between frames. That's quite interesting. Let's just die first. That's actually what I usually, you know, it reminds me of what like you tell your mother before. I was playing like COD when I was 15, and when it was, you know, dinner, I always told my mother, wait, just let me die first, you know. So, I'm really large, so it's very easy to pick up the points. But I think I'm problematically large. Yeah, and there I died. Don't be too large. Don't be too large. Okay, let's show some goddamn code as well, because we are in software development and game development category. So of course, we need to show some code. And that, my friend, is way too small. Yeah. I don't have a GitHub or a GitHub Copilot subscription anymore. Do I think I'm gonna buy a new subscription? Okay, that looks pretty good. Pretty zoomed in for my taste, but it works. So let's see. So how does it work? Yes. So the player, actually there are okay, well that makes it a bit hard to show the file, but it should be in the player folder under the mod, and mod is just like the main file here for Jesus Christ, everything is so zoomed in, but otherwise you can't read, but it makes things a little bit difficult. Oh yeah, collision between frames, and we have the player death. No, not that one. That's also interesting, but not we're gonna talk about. Okay, so this player collision, then is collision between frames. So actually there are two ways we're checking for collisions for two different scenarios. So let's check first the collision between frames. So this is Bevy. In Bevy you have functions, because this is an ECS, so entity component system, a function that takes in resources and components and then performs some logic, and they do this every frame. So this function runs once a frame, and we have added it up here into a plugin, and here you can see update means run every frame, and we say these three systems need to run every game. And this has to do a bit with the controlling about like pausing system. So for example, you could see in the game that I could pause the game. That is because they're in this game system set that I can like turn on and off and then I can pause the game so that when you're on the pause screen, the game stops playing, and so on. So collision between frames, what does that mean? It means that here I'm keeping a hash map of entity to position. So this is a vector 2, so it's a 2D coordinate space of the last place you were last frame. So every frame I will update it to your current position, and then the next frame I will use that position to calculate the line between last frame position and the current frame position. This is the physics context. I'm using a physics plugin called Rapier. It's a very big and it's a nice one in Rust. And then they have a Bevel plugin. The Bevel plugin isn't super ergonomical in all cases. There's another physics plugin that I would try to test out, but now I've already written everything in Rapier, so I don't want to rewrite it. I don't think that will be worth it. So I'm gonna stick with Rapier, but there is another one that I also would like to check out. Okay, here we have something interesting. It's the players. So players in an ECS are data, and an ECS data can be queried just like in a database. So I'm saying I want this data, I want the player entity, and I want its transform. Transform is what contains, where you are, the scale, the rotation, etc. of the player. And I want the entity. Entity is basically an ID. That's how to think about it. The entity is the ID of the player, and I'm using this, of course, I want to query for the entity because I'm going to use it as my hash map later to store the location. Then we also want the entity kind. So I have something called an entity kind, which is like all of these different objects in the game. All these different entities have a different kind, so I can see if it's the player, is it an enemy, is it a point, or is it a pickup. And we're going to see how we're going to use that. Then we also have spawning events. So in Bevy we can have that in the system. We can create some logic, and then we can reuse the logic and decouple logic from one another by spawning events that other parts of the game can react to. So then we can have like, this system produces these enemy death events, and then we can have different consumers of those events. Maybe one pauses the game, another creates a death animation, a third one like checks if our score is a high score, etc. So you can decouple those logics from one another. Yeah. So the way it works is that we go through all the players. Yes, this is a bit strange because there's only one player in my game, but I've written the code so there can be multiple players. So because that's more, it's just easy, because otherwise I need to do like an if statement here and just get the single one. It's just as easy to just iterate over all of them. So then I can just write the code as if there are many players and make my code more general, because it isn't even harder to do. It's just as easy. And then of course I get the last position. How do I know that? Well, I take my hash map. The hash map is local, so it's local to this system. You can think of this as, just as in object-oriented programming, right? You can have local variables that are hidden from the outside world. Well, systems in Bevy, even though they're functions, can still have local state that only they get to see, and they do it by using this local. So this data here, only this function will ever be able to access it. And it's super useful for scenarios like this. So last position, I just look up, or if there isn't a last position, I will insert the current position of the player. And obviously this is like the very first frame the game runs and the player has spawned. It won't have a last position, right? Because the previous frame we were in the like in the UI, in the we just clicked on the start game. So there might not be a position, so then we will create that. Next up, we will create a filter that will filter because we need it when we are checking our physics. And here I have written a special function to do this because checking a line is a bit tricky, so I pull out that code into an individual function. But you can see here that I'm giving it the context, the physics context, which it need. And then you will see the start position, you will see the end position, and note here, like on the very first frame that a player exists, the start and end positions will be the same, but that's fine obviously. And then I will also give it the enemy radius. So I don't want just to draw a line between 2 points. I want to know the size of the player as well. So otherwise you will get like infinitely small, which could be an interesting, high level gameplay knowledge, that if when you move between one frame, your player is actually smaller than otherwise. But I didn't want that, so instead I compute the actual radius. So here I just take the player radius, which is a constant, transform it with its scale. I'm just picking the X scale here arbitrarily because I happen to know that the X, Y, and Z scales will always be the same, because we are like in 2D, and well, that's what I want. That's just arbitrary knowledge I know from writing the game. And then I'm also gonna fix this by this, and that is actually because the player's collider is a little bit smaller. I want the player's collider to be a little bit smaller than the player, to give you some wiggle room, to give you like instances where I think we even had it before, where I picked up something just before dying, or you just barely avoid something. It gives you a little bit of favoring the player a bit, so you can get those real clutch moments to happen, where like, actually if I'd done this completely fairly, you would have lost here, but I'm gonna give you a little bit of edge, so that it doesn't feel unfair, so you really feel like, oh, when you touch something, you really touched it. So that is why I have this, why I reduce the size a tiny amount. Yes, so then whenever there's a collision event, because that is what happens, we have collision events here. So we check these between these 2 points. We can check that code. It's a bit complicated, I think. Yeah, it's a bit complicated. But basically what it does is that from this, it will check every entity that intersects the line between these 2 points and store it in a hashet and return that hashet. So it starts by creating a ball with a specific radius. So then what's the radius we give? It will give like a direction and velocity, and here I have to like do some transformation, some trigonometry or some vector math to get the direction and a velocity, because the API that I'm used is context intersection with shape, which is provided by Rapier. Well, it's kind of weird in a way. I don't know why it's like this, but it wants like that you start from a certain position, then that you give it like the shape that you give it, you like can rotate the shape. But here I have a circle, right? So a circle then it needs to be rotated. Like if you rotate it, it's it's symmetrical in any rotation. So we can use 0.0 there arbitrarily. There we have our shape, of course, that's a circle or a sphere. And then we have our filter, right? That is gonna filter out some entities that we don't want. So this will say that, okay, if we hit something, then we're also gonna apply this filter and see if the filter accepts it or not. And that's useful because sometimes we might not want to intersect with certain entities. Like we don't want to intersect with ourselves, for example. We don't want this line to intersect with the player character. So this filter will say only intersect with enemies, points, and pickups, but not the player character. And then we have a callback that is called for every frame, or not every frame, for every entity that intersects this line. And for every and all of those we just insert into this hashet. I find this kind of weird, but I believe the reason why it's written this way is so that here you can give like true or false. And the reason why is because when you return true, it will like continue the search and, you know, move through it will actually, I don't know if it's true or false. Basically, if you return true, I think it stops the search, and if you return false, it continues the search, I think. Interesting though that I've written it this way, where it does this multiple times instead of just doing it in one like, I don't understand why we have a loop here. What the hell does this say? Okay. For some reason I've done this in a loop, then I do a step. Yeah, I do current position, velocity, entity, radius. Okay, I see now what I'm doing. So when you return true, it will probably do it for everything that intersects. So it won't stop on the first, it will go through all. But there wasn't a function to draw a line with a shape. So I wanted a radius to the line as well. There was only, I believe, Rapier only has a function that allows you to draw a line but with no width. And I wanted to also get, you know, this entity radius thing going, so that you don't get like infinitely small when you move very far distances between two frames. So therefore I am, you know, drawing repeated circles, right? I'm stopped by drawing one circle, then I move a step, and you hear I'm using the entity radius, so I'm moving like the diameter of the shape, and then I do it again, and then I do that so I cover the entire distance between. So it's like my own implementation of that on top of their API. And then I just return everything that intersected between those two. Might be a bit difficult to imagine how this works or what it means, but basically I'm drawing a bunch of circles one after one another between 2 points. And here I like increment every time. And then when the shape gets to the current distance becomes too small, it stops. And you return all the entities that you found. So then we have found all the entities on this line, or rather on this line with a bunch of circles drawn on across it, so that we get the width as well of the player. And then we go through those entities and we'll get its kind, so we can see, oh, it's an enemy, oh, it's a point, oh, it's a pickup, and from that we spawn events. So if you touch an enemy, we get the player death event and an enemy death event. So here you see why I have like events, because then I can decouple logic, and here I can spawn, like I can even spawn two. And here we have a point, then we create the point collected event, and here we have a pickup event. And at the very end we set the last position to transform translation.xy, so we update the last position for the next frame. So we do it between the so we always do it between the two, you know, correct locations of the last points. So like for the next frame, its last frame collision will be the position of our current frame, so then we need to update the last position. And we can do it this, so here we just use simple mutation right. These were saved in this hash set, but then we like get that out, and this is a mutable reference, so then we can just update it in place. So that is how that works. And then you have something very similar but for player collisions, and here instead we're reacting to collision events, which happens when two colliders bonk into one another in the game, right? So this is like, if you just stand still, if we didn't have this, if you just stood still, you wouldn't be able to die, because your collider, since this enemy, right, it checks a little bit smaller than your collider. If you stand still, the enemies would just bounce off you and you would be invincible. So therefore we need this as well, that says like, oh, actually if an enemy touches you while you're standing still, then you die as well. So if we didn't have this, you could just stand still and you wouldn't be able to die. But it's the exact same thing, but here we're reacting to something else. Here we're reacting to collision events that Rapier is emitting. And I don't really like their API because it's really weird. You can't like subscribe to collision events for specific entities, and you can't really filter them in any reasonable way. So what you have to do is that you have to like, you get like this collision event started, and you get like one entity and the other entity. And notice here, like, you don't even get the position where the collision happened, which I don't understand why. There are many times that would be super useful, like I have like collision effects, so like a bunch of sparks, but these collision events don't contain the location where that happens, so I had to get that location through another way. I don't understand why it's not just included here. It seems like it would be a lot easier, but maybe I'm missing something about what the collision even is. Maybe a collision isn't just a point in 3D space, but something more complex. Maybe that explains why, but I couldn't really understand it otherwise. Anyway, so you get these events, so then I need to look up and see like, oh, what kind of entities did collide with one another? And that is what happens here. That's why I have the kind query, as we saw previously, but I do them both this time. And then first I need to like check, oh, did I even get anything? Are they like entities that even have kinds? And if they do have kinds, if they weren't like none results or empty results, I can do this. And here, notice here that I'm doing like both versions. First I'm doing kind 1, kind 2, then I'm doing kind 2, kind 1. And that is because I don't know which of these two would be the player and which would be the enemy. It's random, it could be both. That also kind of sucks. I understand that it's gonna be that way, that you can't really know that from their API, and maybe there's no way to design it, but it means that all the code you write here is always duplicated, and you have to do crap like this, which is really, you know, kind of annoying. So all the event matching happens here, and it's kind of simple, right? I just take the two kinds and then check player enemy. Well, if it's a player enemy event, then you die and I send a death event. Player point, well, then, you know, then you get the point, and otherwise there's pickup. And here I only have like, oh, if the first is, where are we? Here, like, if the first is player and if the second is the point, or is the other kind, then we trigger an event, and otherwise we just ignore everything, and then I just call it twice because I didn't want to duplicate the logic. So that's kind of how that works. So hopefully it was insightful. I'm now gonna end the stream, so the stream. So have a good one. Goodbye.